Imagine launching a new product into a market where 60% of your target demographic outright refuses to even consider it. That was the reality for Skoda, a Central and Eastern European automaker attempting to capture market share. To understand the baseline, we have to look at the brand's 40-year legacy in the West, where it was firmly established as the absolute laughingstock of the automotive industry. This toxicity resulted in a specific social cost. Drivers reported active embarrassment just being seen behind the wheel of a Skoda. Which brings us to the central thesis of this case study. Objective product quality and engineering cannot independently overcome deeply entrenched toxic brand equity. Fast forward to 1991. The automotive giant Volkswagen acquires a stake in Skoda, executing a massive operational shift. This chart shows the standard corporate turnaround playbook. You inject massive capital, improve the manufacturing pipeline, and operate on the assumption that better engineering automatically yields market success. The expected final step is a direct, frictionless line from product improvement straight to increased market share. Skoda executed this strategy flawlessly. They introduced dramatic product improvements with the launches of the Felicia in 1994 and the Octavia in 1998. These heavily funded vehicles were a critical success, greeted with highly positive, rave reviews from the automotive press. Yet, despite massive capital funding, superior engineering, and critical acclaim, those objective product improvements failed to translate into impressive sales. The Octavia failed because it hit a brand perception bottleneck. Look at this split-line graph. We see the severe disconnect between Skoda's high-quality engineering peaking on one side and flatlined consumer adoption rates on the other. The specific failure point is here, market penetration refusing to rise regardless of product quality. The fatal flaw in their 1990s corporate strategy was the purposeful refusal to acknowledge the public's highly negative perception of the brand. Presenting a highly engineered car with a badge widely considered a joke created cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort experienced by someone holding two contradictory beliefs. The corporate strategy of ignoring this negative perception actively alienated Western buyers, inadvertently reinforcing the brand's toxicity in their minds. Launching a heavily funded, reinvented product into a toxic brand environment without directly addressing that toxicity yields a predictable failure to convert capital into market share. By the year 2000, Skoda had reached a make-or-break moment for its survival in Western markets. They launched a new vehicle, the Fabia. The Fabia achieved immediate objective success, securing highly positive press and even winning the Car of the Year title. But at the dealership level, the grim reality persisted. The average buyer still found the prospect of driving a Skoda extremely embarrassing. The ultimate financial constraint complicated the launch further. The marketing budget for the Fabia was drastically slashed by 50% compared to the earlier Octavia launch. To solve this crisis, Skoda brought in a new strategic variable, the Fallon marketing agency. Fallon entered a scenario defined by high friction, achieving higher ROI with half the resources, while confronting that 60% absolute rejection rate. ROI, or return on investment, is a metric used to understand the profitability of an investment relative to its cost. Fallon established a radical pivot in the strategic directive. They instructed Skoda to abandon its corporate pride and stop ignoring the 40-year-old joke. They utilized strategic brand confrontation, a method where a company actively weaponizes its own negative equity. This shows the mechanics, actively integrating the consumer's cognitive dissonance into the advertising message. The overlap generated the campaign's provocative idea. They showed consumers making fools of themselves by assuming the car was far too good to be a Skoda. The execution was exact. Television spots featured people utterly refusing to believe that such high-quality engineering could carry the Skoda badge. This entire strategy of self-deprecation was anchored by a single, brutally honest tagline: "It's a Skoda, honest." By explicitly bringing the consumer in on the joke, the brand neutralized its own toxicity. It disarmed the critics and aligned the buyer with the company. But we have to look past the creative humor to understand the foundational marketing tenets that powered this turnaround. As seen in this diagram, the core tenet at play was delivering true value to the customer. The value proposition consisted of both the physical vehicle and the psychological relief provided to the consumer by finally acknowledging the brand's past. Pulling this off required high-level strategic integration. Advertising and public relations had to perfectly align to speak with one unified, honest voice across all channels. Negative brand perception is not a death sentence. It is stored kinetic energy that can be leveraged as a positive driving force if handled with strategic honesty. Let's examine the hard data to see the immediate quantitative ROI of the campaign. This dashboard highlights a massive advertising efficiency metric. The campaign was twice as effective at getting noticed. That attention generated a 34% growth curve in sales volume. At the peak, they moved over 30,000 units. This created a radical qualitative shift in consumer demand. For the first time in modern history, Skoda dealerships actually had a waiting list. The underlying brand perception shifted alongside it. The percentage of consumers who viewed Skodas as a joke dropped from 47% down to 32%. Directly confronting and shifting the psychological baseline of the consumer immediately shifted the financial reality of the corporation. Zooming out from unit sales, we look at the macro corporate objective: overall market penetration in the West. The ultimate triumph of the campaign was that Skoda captured a psychologically massive 1% market share of all new cars sold in the UK. The forward-looking momentum this generated allowed them to immediately and confidently revise their market share target to 2% by 2004. Comparing the failure of the well-funded Octavia against the success of the budget-constrained Fabia isolates strategic brand integration as the critical variable for success. Product engineering and capital investment build the physical vehicle, but only strategic, psychologically aware marketing can build the road it drives on.